Our next testifier on the docket here is Senate File 205, Senator Wiger. Good morning, Senator. If you could identify yourself for the tape and proceed with your testimony.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. I'm Chuck Wiger, and before us is Senate File 205. I have an author's amendment, and this is the first stop, and if Ms. James could please distribute that, and if someone would be so kind as to move it, I can then have the bill in the form.
Could I have somebody move the bill?
Mr. Chair. Or the amendment.
Senator Newton.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move Senate File 205.
And that will be as amended once we get the amendment in front of us.
Sure.
Members, have you got the amendment in front of you yet? No. Okay.
And Mr. Chair,
could you explain your amendment?
Yes. Overall, the bill extends the exclusion. Right now, we have a market value cap at 8 years for property tax relief for the surviving spouse of a disabled veteran. And the amendment would make this for, there's two classifications. One is at 100% total disability. The other is 70% plus. And this makes clear that the category for 70% up to 100 is included as well. So it would include everything, and I think that's what it does. And then I'll just speak overall to the bill, and then we're going to hear from the star as to why.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Wiger. Any objections to the amendment? Senator Newton, we okay with just including that in the, just incorporating that in the bill?
Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. We'll incorporate that amendment then for you. Senator Wiger, please proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. It was back in 2009 that the legislature passed in a strong bipartisan manner a tribute to veterans, disabled vets, to provide some limited property tax relief so they can stay in their home. And the bill back then had an exclusion. The first $150,000 on market value would be exempt from property taxes. And if you had 100% disability, then you could have up to $300,000 excluded. This was only for 1 year. Then it was modified again in 2011, 2014 for some extensions. My testifier, Christeen Stone, has been on this journey ever since 2009 to talk about the need, which you'll hear shortly. Christeen Stone was married for many years to Warrant Officer Victor Stone, and we're going to show a picture and pass that around. They met at Fort Snelling, and he survived the Battle of the Bulge in World War II some 72 years ago, and nearly 100,000, including the Allies, lost their lives in that war, in that battle, and thousands more just were disabled, injured, and Victor made it back. Warrant Officer Victor Stone, and today generations, with them being together and some 20 great-grandchildren, and the family keeps getting larger, but almost didn't make it back. I know how committed you are to honoring veterans and their family, because they pay that sacrifice, as you know, as well. And so the plea here is to have that exclusion, but to not have a sunset, but to lift it. And I want to thank Senator Lane and Senator Clausen, who have bills that you'll hear as well. I think there's some language that we can harmonize in tax committee to make it even better. So with that background, I'd like to introduce Christeen Stone of Maplewood, my constituent, who's testified on the need for this for several years. She's a former Minnesota ARP Citizen of the Year, has been active in so many things, and we don't have time, but she's here to pay tribute to our vets, and I'd like to introduce Christeen Stone.
Thank you, Senator Wiger. Please identify yourself for the tape.
Do you want me to talk about the picture first?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, that picture was taken in November, the Thanksgiving before my husband passed away. My grandson that was newly married, he was going overseas on a mission with his wife who was going to be teaching English in Vietnam. And so he knew his grandpa wouldn't be there when he came back. And so this was a picture he had made, and we used it as my husband was in hospice. We knew he had been in hospice for 3 days at Pillars. And my grandson had this picture enlarged and had sent to him just the day that he passed away. We showed him this picture when the nurses had moved him around, and he became aware we were there and smiled and acknowledged us. And we showed him this picture of my grandson and him as he was saying his last farewell. He smiled, acknowledged the picture, closed his eyes, and went to sleep. And so that picture is a very special picture to us. So when I was told I could bring a picture of that, my name is Christeen Stone. I'm starting my 30th year as a volunteer advocate for seniors. I've been asked to give my opinion on Bill 205. This bill gives strength to a bill passed in 2010, which I had testified on along with a young widow who had lost her husband recently. That was Senator Wiger's bill. It was very timely because my husband had passed away just a few months earlier, at which time his pension ended. He no longer had. He had been on only one form of disability until 4 years before he passed away. The disabled veterans, along with my son, were able to get him on full disability. My son is a retired occupational therapist and now works with his wife, who is an advocate for seniors. He was a big help. My husband was in the service for 12 years and had planned to be a career soldier. He was hoping to start officer training. He was a warrant officer. His accident while in service ended that. It was at the Battle of the Bulge when our troops were in retreat. They stopped in an area where there had been artillery activity. He jumped out of the truck with his backpack full of heavy gear into an artillery shell hole. That action did permanent damage and ended his career at the Army. I want to thank my senators, Chuck Wiger and the others who were so thoughtful in sponsoring this bill. The benefit of not having to pay property tax has been so helpful since I'm only receiving Social Security and small IRA distribution. And I want to say I came to Minnesota from Texas in 1940. I fell in love with Minnesota, and when my husband went overseas, I came back here with a 1-year-old baby and bought a home where I still live 74 years ago, and I've had to do a little rechanging, but I'm still living in that home. So
70.
I'm 96, if I didn't say so.
Thank you, Ms. Stone. I appreciate your testimony, and I appreciate your willingness to share your husband with our country. Thank you. Mr. Wiger, Senator Wiger, any further comments?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you very much for the hearing, and again, thank you, Ms. Stone, and our plea is that she can stay in the home that she and Victor had lived for 70-some years, and that when they do eventually reunite, they can say that it was all, her ability to stay at the home was made possible through actions that you have had, and this makes the difference for staying in that home for that additional property tax relief. So,
Great.
thank you.
We're going to do the best we can here. So, Senator Newton, would you renew your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to renew my motion to move Senate File 205 as amended for possible inclusion.
We're going to be, we're going to be moving that on to taxes, so we'll renew that motion to say Senate File 205 will pass as amended to the Tax Committee. Any questions, any further discussion? Members, let's vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion is adopted. Senator Wiger, you're on your way. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Stone. Thank you for your service.